Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking you to Tunisia, a nation that has, historically served as this incredible bridge between Europe and Africa.
Absolutely. You think of these sun-drenched Mediterranean beaches, the fertile Maghreb, and a history that goes all the way back to Carthage.
And it's not just a tourist draw either. I mean, the numbers are huge, nearly 9.4 million visitors in 2023. It's a really crucial node for geopolitical and economic activity.
Yeah, but that immense cultural richness is now facing, well, let's call them simultaneous existential pressures.
Right.
And the sources for this deep dive, they really paint a picture of extraordinary risk. We're pulling data from decades of World Bank climate projections and also some very recent, very acute geopolitical risk reports from this autumn 2025.
So our mission here is pretty straightforward. We need to unpack how Tunisia is managing this accelerating long-term environmental squeeze. We're talking heat, water scarcity, while at the same time navigating high-stakes political volatility and trying to pull off this monumental economic transformation. I'm talking about the massive Elmov infrastructure project.
Well, we're really looking past that postcard view to understand the full spectrum of challenges and, opportunities.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The deepest and maybe the most dangerous long-term threat: climate risk.
It is. And Tunisia isn't just subject to global warming, it's sitting right in the middle of a Mediterranean climate hotspot. This whole region is warming up at a rate that's significantly faster than the global average.
The data on that it's pretty sobering. Between 1971 and 2020, Tunisia warmed at a rate of 0.46 degrees Celsius per decade.
Per decade. That's incredibly rapid.
And looking ahead, the projections suggest this heating trend is just going to continue, rising at an estimated 0.35 degrees Celsius per decade toward the middle of the century.
And to put that into context, we're looking specifically at the SSP3 7.0 scenario from the World Bank data.
Okay, so what does that actually mean for people listening? Is that the worst case scenario?
That's a great question. No, it's not the worst case, but it models a future with high emissions and medium risk, where, geopolitical fragmentation and regional rivalry kind of slow down global adaptation efforts.
So a plausible and difficult future.
Exactly. It's a very policy-relevant benchmark for national planning.
And if that scenario holds true, the implications for just daily life are staggering. Especially when it comes to extreme heat, we're seeing this dramatic shift in the structure of the Tunisian year.
We are. We analyzed the projected surge in what they call hot days, so days hitting maximum temperatures above 5 Celsius.
Okay.
Historically, Tunisia averaged about 57 of those days a year. That's nearly 2 months.
Right.
By the 2040-2059 period, that number is expected to leap to 84 days.
84. Wow.
That's almost 3 full months of extreme daytime heat.
And that has to fundamentally impact productivity. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about massive strain on public health systems, energy for cooling, a complete restructuring of any kind of outdoor work.
And the interior regions, places like Kairoun and Sidi Bouzid, they're seeing the fastest rise. They're gaining over 7 additional hot days per decade.
And the heat doesn't just stop when the sun goes down.
No. And the absence of that nighttime relief is arguably even more critical for survival, for agriculture. We looked at tropical nights where the minimum temperature stays above 23 degrees Celsius.
That's critical for the human body to recover, right? And for crops to cool down.
Exactly. And the rise here is just as dramatic. Those tropical nights are expected to surge from 55 days a year to nearly 89 days by mid-century.
And where is that trend concentrated?
What's really noteworthy is that it's heavily concentrated along the densely populated coast. Places like Ariana, Tunis, Naboul, that's where you have the highest population density, meeting the most intense nighttime heat island effect.
A dangerous combination.
A very dangerous combination. And if we synthesize those temperature extremes and connect them directly to population risk, the picture becomes very, very clear.
So how does that look?
Nationally, the percentage of the population exposed to really dangerous levels of heat, we're talking days above 40 Celsius.
So truly life-threatening heat.
Exactly. That's projected to just skyrocket from about 10% historically up to 67% by the year 2075.
67%. And I guess some southern areas are already living that reality?
They are. Areas like Kabylie, historically, they already have nearly 100% population exposure to those 40-degree-plus days. The data suggests that the North is simply catching up to the extreme reality the South already faces.
And this heat crisis is obviously compounded by water scarcity.
Of course. The climate models project an average precipitation reduction of almost 8%, 7.9% by that same 2040-2059 period.
And crucially, this decline hits the rainier regions the hardest, right? The breadbasket areas.
Exactly. The northwestern regions, places like Jendouba and Beja, that's where it's going to hurt the most.
But the sources suggest that 100% of the population is already exposed to drought risk. So isn't that nearly 8% reduction more of a tipping point than just another threat?
That's precisely it. It moves from a persistent risk to a systemic failure. This decline just accelerates desertification. It pushes that desert climate zone northward.
And it directly threatens key sectors.
Key sectors. Olives, cereals, livestock. When drought is already a certainty, even a small reduction in rainfall pushes large-scale farming into a deep deficit, which drives internal pressure and potentially migration.
And beyond the land, the pressure is mounting on Tunisia's coastline, which is so vital.
It is. The threat of sea level rise is estimated at 0.23 meters by 2050 under this scenario.
And given that most of the economic activity, the tourism infrastructure, the population, it's all along that eastern Mediterranean coast, that presents a massive liability, doesn't it?
A huge infrastructural liability. And the blue economy fisheries, marine ecosystems, it faces a parallel crisis.
Wow.
Sea surface temperatures are projected to increase by 1.3 degrees Celsius by mid-century.
And the implication of that is what for fish stocks?
It's staggering. Marine animal biomass along the coast is projected to decline by up to 40% by the end of the century.
40%. That's a huge economic blow to coastal communities that really rely on fishing.
A devastating blow.
Okay, let's pivot now.
Yeah.
From this long, slow environmental war to the immediate complexities on the ground in September 2025.
Right.
Because Tunisia is simultaneously fighting internal political struggles, external scrutiny, and trying to execute this massive economic strategy.
And that political volatility, it really acts as a risk multiplier for any big infrastructure project. We're seeing a kind of trifecta of political pressure points operating right now.
Okay, you ready?
Internally, you have the powerful UGTT union pushing hard. They're calling for increased mobilization in the private sector, stressing that salary negotiations are a fundamental right. This really signals ongoing internal struggles over governance.
And an attempt by the union to regain its political influence.
Yes. And at the same time, you have this sharp external scrutiny. In the U.S. House, the Tunisia Democracy Restoration Act was introduced.
Right, aiming to impose sanctions or suspend aid to security bodies involved in undermining democratic institutions. A direct challenge.
A very direct challenge.
Well,
The reaction from Tunisian MPs was predictable and swift. They condemned the U.S. bill as a blatant attack on national sovereignty.
and that's really the core political balancing act, isn't it? Maintaining internal stability while fending off perceptions of foreign interference.
It is. And underneath all of this, you have these persistent concerns over freedom of the press and the justice system.
Like the case of the journalist Shada Hajimbarik.
Exactly. She launched a hunger strike protesting a 4-year judicial delay in her appeal. These long delays in sensitive, high-profile cases, they just feed this narrative of political pressure on the courts, and that in turn complicates investor confidence.
And yet, despite all this high political risk, the economy is showing surprising resilience in certain areas.
It is. We saw a positive shift recently. For the first time since the post-COVID period began, minimum wage growth at 7.5% actually outpaced inflation, which was at 5.7%.
That's a big deal. Even a modest reversal of shrinking purchasing power is a major boost for domestic stability.
It is, and you also see stability in core export sectors. Phosphate production, for example, is holding steady. It's showing an 18% increase in commercial production and about 11% growth in exports.
They even delivered a big shipment of tricalcium phosphate for the local agricultural sector, which has to help with some of those internal food security goals.
It does, and all of this feeds directly into the massive project everyone is watching, ELMED.
Right. And Italy has already committed a $55 million credit line for Tunisian SMEs, which signals strong European interest in stabilizing Tunisia as a long-term partner.
But the real commitment is the ELMED project itself. We're talking nearly €1 billion.
So let's unpack ELMED. This is the undersea electricity interconnection, right?
Yeah.
A 600-megawatt HVDC cable.
Yes, linking Sicily in Italy directly to Cap One in Tunisia. The Italian firm Prysmian won the €460 million cable contract, but the total project cost is approaching €1 billion. It's scheduled for completion in 2028.
So not that far off. And the goals here they're enormous and potentially conflicting.
They are. For Europe, it's about integrating North African renewable energy into the EU grid, boosting their energy security. For Tunisia, the aims are to stabilize its own electricity grid and, establish a direct export route for its own solar and wind energy.
I see the potential benefit, but putting a developing economy into such a demanding, competitive energy marketplace,
Hmm.
especially one dealing with the internal political volatility and climate pressures we've been talking about, that sounds inherently risky.
It is. It means that if Tunisia fails to maintain reliable output, it jeopardizes the entire strategic relationship with the EU.
But the upside is huge.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
The project promises a huge injection of capital and aims to generate up to 70,000 jobs, a huge incentive for development. But those jobs and that reliability, they depend entirely on external financing and the ability to operate this complex infrastructure under potentially extreme climate conditions.
It's a high-stakes bet on stability,
A very high-stakes bet.
which makes the security situation even more critical. So moving to our third part, let's look at safety, security, and the practical realities that underscore this whole risk profile.
Right.
Despite its appeal, Tunisia operates under a high threat of terrorism. There has been a formal state of emergency in place since 2015.
And travelers have to be acutely aware of the official do not travel zones. These are generally within, say, 16 to 20 kilometers of the borders with Algeria and Libya.
And also specific mountain ranges, known for terrorist activity, like Mount Chambi and the desert south of Ramada, which is a military zone.
Exactly. But what's highly concerning now is how regional geopolitical tensions are directly spilling into Tunisia's maritime space.
You're talking about the incident with the Gaza Aid Flotilla.
Yes, a critical security incident. The suspected drone attacks on two vessels, the Alma and the Family, while they were docked right off Sidi Bou Said in Tunis.
And Tunisian authorities confirmed the Alma was hit by a drone.
They did. And this just illustrates that regional conflicts, especially those tied to Gaza, are actively heightening the security sensitivity of Tunisia's position, regardless of its own neutrality.
And when you're trying to secure €1 billion undersea cable, these incidents matter immensely to investors who are assessing sovereign risk.
Immensely. Then you also have scrutiny on the aviation sector. There was a recent near-miss incident at Nice airport where a Nouvel Air flight from Tunis mistakenly aligned with the wrong runway.
It was resolved safely, but it adds reputational pressure on a sector that needs to demonstrate absolute precision to maintain confidence.
It does. Now, for the practicalities for anyone visiting, we can kind of condense the essential need-to-know points into 3 areas.
Okay, what's first?
First, health and finance. Comprehensive travel health insurance is completely non-negotiable. Foreign nationals have to pay high costs upfront for treatment. Financially, you have to remember that importing Tunisian dinars is prohibited, and you must declare any foreign currency over the equivalent of about 5,000 TND when you leave.
Got it. What's number 2?
Second, culture and law. Dress modestly outside of resorts. Cover your shoulders and knees. It's also really important to know local laws. Same-sex sexual activity remains illegal, and it's punishable by imprisonment. And during Ramadan, in daylight hours, avoid eating, drinking, or smoking in public.
Okay. And the third point?
Third is just navigating transactions. In busy tourist areas and souks, petty crime like pickpocketing is common. With taxis, be firm but polite. Insist on the meter or use an app like InDrive or Yasir because some drivers use a two-rate logic for tourists.
And when shopping?
Be aware of the referral habit. Where a local directs you to a friend's shop, it can limit your options. Confidently walking away if you're uncomfortable with the negotiation is always the best approach.
So if we pull all of this together, it seems Tunisia is engaged in a profound juggling act.
That's a good way to put it. On one hand, it's fighting this long war against climate change, losing water, and gaining what amounts to 3 months of extreme heat every year.
And on the other, it's attempting this colossal, highly complex economic and strategic transformation through the ELMED project.
All while these internal political balancing acts and volatile regional security threats are just escalating.
So the environmental path and the economic path seem like they're on a collision course.
They are. The success of ELMED is completely tied to reliability, renewable energy export capacity. But the survival of the population and the agricultural sector is tied to water and temperature management.
Which brings us to the final provocative thought for our listeners.
And it raises the ultimate pressure point for the nation's future. How will Tunisia manage the growing projected domestic water demands driven by climate change and the intense need to cool its population and its crops,
while simultaneously trying to meet the highly competitive and reliable energy export demands of the multi-billion-euro ELMED project. The country cannot afford to fail at either one. It can't fail at domestic adaptation or strategic energy export. But these two goals are fundamentally competing for the same, very constrained resources. That is the balancing act that will define the next 2 decades for Tunisia.